Welcome, everybody. Dave Walker here on a rainy, cold, windy Monday in Chicago. And I'm joined by someone else who's in the rain and the wind and the cold, and that's Eric Rose, the founder and CEO of Alignable. How you doing today, Eric?
I'm doing great, and I'm sitting here in Boston where it is rainy and windy, but not as cold, it sounds like, as Chicago.
Okay. Well, that's
But
good. Well, you get our
yeah,
weather basically, after usually
exactly.
36 hours, it comes your way. So get
Yeah,
ready.
thanks for that.
Yeah, we meant to do that. Anyway, listen, I appreciate you doing this because, we've invited a number of executives from leaders from around the B to SMB market space and institute members to really come and talk about what programs they've initiated or evolved over the course of the last 6 months to assist small business. And so far, the interviews I've done have just been absolutely terrific. Really interesting to hear the thought process, hear the rollouts, hear the learnings, hear the successes and the not so successes, and really, warts and all. But as we all kind of try to develop our own playbooks to figure out how on earth can we help our customers better, particularly as we seem to be segueing into, as we were just talking about, into a kind of a second wave of crisis response here. Important that we all learn from
Absolutely.
each other. But before I really dive into that and this wonderful program that you've initiated called My Money Stays Local, give us a quick progress report on the Alignable business and really how you've been doing.
Well, first of all, thanks for including me in the conversation. Alignable has been incredibly fortunate throughout this time because what we basically provide is an opportunity for small business owners to talk to each other.
Hmm.
And so, in early March, we noticed a significant uptick in the number of businesses joining, engaging on the platform. And our job since then has been trying to find as many ways possible to understand the problem
Hmm.
that business owners are facing, to create a voice for small businesses out in the marketplace with politicians and the media to make sure that the challenges small business owners are facing are front and center as much as humanly possible, and to build products and features that will enable business owners to work together to get through this. Because ultimately, our belief is that small business owners are stronger together. And the only way that we're going to get through this nightmare is literally to come together, work together, and find ways to support each other through this crisis.
Did this? I want to talk. I want you to talk a little bit about the Alignable survey that you've been running since. Really, the first one was in March, right? Or
Yeah. Early on in March, I think March 12th, we
yeah,
started
so you
off.
were kind of on it very quickly. The evolution of the responses of small business in the survey, kind of over the course of the last 6 months, some of the biggest things that you've seen kind of come out of it, and I'll just put a plug in for it. I read it religiously the day it comes out. I'm always astounded at the level of candor in the insights, and I feel like I'm hearing verbatims from small businesses, and they're not just kind of that qualified anecdotal, oh, I heard a small business say this. It feels like it's got this huge kind of quantified value as well behind it.
Well, I thank you for that, and I would love to take credit for it, but literally that comes from reading the comments
Mm-hmm.
to the poll questions. We quite often will ask a closed-ended bunch of questions and then a couple open-ended ones where they can actually give us their feelings and what's happening to them. And, whether it was feedback from their experience in trying to gain access to the PPP funds or the initial impact being felt as their businesses were forced to be closed in March and April. We were able to capture that, and I get the benefit of having to read through those comments every month as I'm creating the survey summary, and I try and channel back what I hear, both the concerns and also the great stories of how people have adapted their business, either to help others or to change the way their business goes to business so that they can stay in business. I mean, small business owners are incredibly resilient. They're entrepreneurs, they're problem solvers. And they're not going to sit there and wait for the world to come back to them. They're going to find a way to get out there in front and do the right things. They're going to save their business if at all possible. So I just try and channel that to the greatest extent that I can, but I'm glad it resonates so well with you.
Yeah, it does. There's no question. And um, do you get a sense that they really value the ability to not just connect with the small businesses that may happen to be their peers on Main Street of the town they live in, but really across the country, they're able to really kind of connect with this network of it's more than 5 million small businesses now, isn't it?
Yeah, we're almost 6 million at this point.
Wow, that's amazing.
Adding hundreds of thousands a month. And a lot of times we react to them because we try and take our lead from them. And we early on, we had a bunch of florists who came to us and said, I'm really struggling. I need to talk to other florists. Can you connect me? And so we literally put together, we call it a survival group for 100 florists from across the country, and literally just gave them some functionality to allow them to just talk to each other on an ongoing basis. And then we just stepped out of it and let them go. And to this date, they're constantly, talking to each other, bringing in other florists who want to be part of the discussion. And they're trying to help each other out because they don't compete with each other, right? And even if they're in towns 3 away from each other, they realize that by helping each other, the odds of them succeeding goes up. And so, it's through initiatives like that where we can help business owners get answers by just connecting them in one way or another that we're focused on our side.
It's incredible. A quick story. My church's men's business group, and we've been kind of gathering together, physically for years now, and obviously with COVID haven't been able to, and just a kind of a happenstance discovery that virtually all of these businesses were Alignable members. And so we started using Alignable as a really more easily connecting with each other and really finding out what was going on in each other's business. It's become so popular. There's a number of branches of our church across the Chicago area that have kind of picked up the same thing and said, this is a great platform for us to really kind of carve out our own space and our own connectivity with each other, and really help each other out.
Well, that's awesome to hear, because we're about to roll out some groups functionality that'll make it even easier for those groups of businesses to be talking to each other, and the thread's going to be a lot more organized. And tell them to hang in there for like a week or two, and they're going to find some really cool stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
So there's the inside scoop.
Yeah, that's great. So I want you to talk about My Money Stays Local, but I'd like you to kind of give us some background and some backstory of what was it within the survey that you observed that really kind of prompted how you really thought of this concept called My Money Stays Local.
Well, I guess this is the fact that I was a crazy economics major when I was an undergraduate, which is why I started doing the polling early on with the team. Was like, this is something where data has never been captured before. Nobody really understood in March where we were going, and I think even to this day, is many people are scratching their heads saying, how are we going to get through this? What's it going to look like at the end? And so I'm kind of a data junkie. Venkat's a total data junkie. And so we realized it's like, let's capture as much data as we possibly can to really understand this. And let's do it consistently over time so that we can really piece together and understand how a pandemic affects an economic system, the small business economy. And so early on, and prior to this, I'd done a bunch of research looking at what FEMA does when a hurricane hits, because we had a bunch of natural disasters hitting, and we were already thinking about, well, how can we help business owners when there's a natural disaster hitting? When a hurricane hits San Antonio or Houston, what could the business owners that were in South Carolina tell them about how to be prepared, what to do after, and all of that, right? So we were already thinking about this framework, and I was like, oh my God, there's no framework for a pandemic. What are we going to do to actually create that framework to understand it? And that's why we started to capture all of this data. And then um, as we saw the impact hit, we started to look at our own behavior, and we realized that we all went into survival mode in April and May, right? We stopped going out. We did everything we could to have people deliver a box to our doorstep that had our essential supplies and products in it. We didn't really want to go to the grocery store or whatever. And then, just really started to think about, well, what's the economic impact of that?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so there's a bunch of great local organizations that really understood, it's Amoeba had done the research that if you spend $100 at a local business, somewhere between 50 and $70 stays within the community.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It provides jobs to people, it goes to local suppliers, it goes to local marketing firms, and it spins within
Mm-hmm.
the community. And
Mm-hmm.
those people in turn spin it. And so the interesting thing is $100 spent at a local business will spin through the community multiple times before it takes the bus out of town.
Mm-hmm.
And the effect of that is that that generates income streams and tax streams and supporting infrastructure that helps a local economy thrive,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's providing tax revenues for parks or recreation or schools or first responders or any of that stuff. That all comes from a vibrant local economy. And if we as consumers have now shifted our buying behavior so that $100 is essentially leaving our community immediately and
Mm-hmm.
going off to some place like Seattle,
Mm-hmm.
or down to Walmart or wherever, less of that money is spending in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases they make the case that all of that $100, except for maybe $1 if the driver of the UPS truck
Mm-hmm.
happens to live in your community, has gone.
Mm-hmm.
So if we want our local economies to recover, then we need to understand our purchase power and where we're spending it, and
Mm-hmm.
recognize that yes, you could buy that product from Amazon or some big box retailer and have it delivered to your front door. Or you could spend that same amount of money, go down to the local retail store and buy it there,
Mm-hmm.
but know that your money's actually doing more than just buying that product. And
Right.
so that's where this whole notion of my money stays local came from. And it's something we're trying to push out and let people grab onto, because small business owners are the first to say, my money stays local.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And what we need to do is get consumers to join them and
Mm-hmm.
say, yeah, if I got a choice between where I'm going to spend my money, I got to spend it locally because it actually will come back to me in multiple ways.
And this is not an argument for the tax revenue that stays local. This is truly the argument of the actual income of the small business gets frankly streamed back in as more income in the local community. And did you quantify kind of what the the in your own case? I mean, did you start to look at, hey, here's what I spend locally versus what I just spent nationally? And you kind of like,
Yeah.
when I first heard about this, I think I did the exercise a little bit and looked at
Yeah.
my credit card bill to Amazon in the
Yep.
month of April, and it was 3 times what it had ever been before, even at Christmas time.
Yep.
And I mean, I was doing late prepper stuff. I was buying things like dried eggs
Yeah.
on Amazon. The
Yeah.
bottom line
Yeah.
was there's a huge, huge shift in my spending
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
Seattle.
Yeah. And look, I mean, it, Amazon's a great company. They're going to be around for a long period of time.
Right.
And I'm not saying you don't ever buy anything from Amazon. I will buy certain products and services from Amazon, but I'll make a conscious decision when I do. I won't just go, oh, I'm going to buy everything from Amazon. I will say, how can I get this locally? And if I can't find it there, then I will go off and look at where, spending it somewhere else. But, being the econ major, I guess I was like, before I start writing about this post, I better do the math myself. And so I did the same thing that you did. I took out my credit card statement and I realized that 44% of what I spent, our family spent in May, was spent at local businesses. And the cool, beautiful thing about your credit card statements is they tell you where
Right.
what town that everything was in. And I
Right.
gave myself a luxury of like, 10 miles around my town. Um, and I said to myself, wow, I mean, I wonder what our company does. And so then I went and I pulled out QuickBooks and I looked at all the places we were spending money. And, we send a lot of money to Amazon for AWS, but, we spend a lot of money locally as well with all the people that we
Hmm.
hire
Hmm.
and all the services that we buy locally. And it turned out that we as a company were at 60%. So I said to myself, okay, if the company's at 60 and I'm at 44, what can I do to get my own personal spending up to the 60%? And I'm whittling away at it. And it's just, every month, I'm just trying to make a more conscious decision when I spend money and try and keep it local as much as possible. So I'd rather go to the local farmer's market, than a big chain grocery store. I'd rather go to the local Italian food market in Falmouth to buy flour and stuff, than go buy it at the large big box retailer. And every little bit matters. And if I can just get from 44% to 50% to 55 to 60, I think that I can make a difference. And if we can get everybody to do that, then we can truly make a big difference and we can really cause our economies to recover at a much faster rate.
Makes all the sense in the world. And this has gone from an idea into a campaign, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we're pushing it out there and trying to get our local communities to take it on themselves and push it out and own it within their community. So, in mine, I have sort of this "My Money Stays Local" in Falmouth, and every time I go out, I take a picture of myself and,
Hmm.
try and post it and that kind of thing. But it's got to be grassroots, right? It's got to be more of an ice bucket challenge type thing than, thou must spend your money locally. People have to want to do it and celebrate it because it's awesome, right? I mean, you're investing in your community.
Right. Right.
What better return do you get?
So do you think the alignable small business members are getting it, or that what's been their response to
It's
the
been fabulous. I mean, so many of them have, responded back saying, I support this. This is my number. I'm at 56% better than you at 44. And small business owners, I think, the one thing that they can do is they can actually share the fact that they already do this with
Hmm.
others and that they recognize that they're trying to keep it local and they're trying to get that flywheel to spin one more time in their community. And
Hmm.
then once you demonstrate that, it's really easy to turn to consumers and say, look, they're doing their part. All we ask of you is just look at your credit card statement and see if you can shift 10% of your spending
Hmm.
back to local businesses. Because it's not going to be a one Saturday in November thing that's going to cause us to recover. This has to be significant and sustained over time for these local economies to come back.
So what do you, as the campaign has been out there, is there anything that you've learned that you've kind of evolved, or is it just something that, that original genesis of it has taken fire, or how are you moving with it?
Well, I think at first we were, trying to get everybody to calculate their number, right? Understand where you're at. And
Hmm.
now it's more about just celebrating when you do go buy something locally, use
Hmm.
social media as a small business owner to show when you're going to shop somewhere else.
Hmm.
And it's going to be even more difficult in the fall as the weather changes for a lot of these businesses. And so, every little thing that we can do to show others that we're walking the walk and talking the talk can help. So that's what we're really more focused on now. We're hoping that people have calculated a number or at least thought about it. And the next stage is really just to take action and go out and do it.
I think the social connection is we're interviewing a woman from LA. I saw her in a profile in the LA Times. Her name is Kimberly Holman Maiden, and she is just a spitfire. But what she has done is basically created a Facebook Live broadcast every week in a favorite local small business. She literally stands inside the business and she broadcasts how wonderful the pretzel rolls are today, or how incredible the nail salon is, or how amazing this pet store is and the new batch of puppies that they've got in. So she started this about 2.5 months ago, and she's now up to the point where, and she doesn't have a huge number of followers, but the businesses that she patronizes that day are saying that they get anywhere between 100 to 150 customers coming in response to her kind of just little social feed broadcast.
That's so
And
awesome.
it's just this thing that, God, when you really think about it, there's probably a million people who could do that, who could
Yeah.
just go stand in one of their local businesses and say, this is a wonderful place and this is why I love it. It's just, I think that's what's going to help, because I think there was one of your surveys when the small businesses were asked, what do you think is going to ultimately get you out of this mess?
Yeah.
And so many of them referred back to local community. It's
Yep.
really, I really don't expect Washington ultimately to save my bacon here. It's going to be
Yeah.
the people around me who are going to help.
Yeah, it's all about consumer confidence, right? I mean, the PPP loans, and I always kind of go back to the FEMA analogy because it's one that's at least well documented. PPP loans was like disaster relief housing after
Hmm.
the hurricane,
Hmm.
right? It's a trailer that they bring down or tents that they bring down. Nobody, really wants to live in them forever, but
Right.
it's a roof
Yeah.
after the storm or during the storm, that provides some protection. And that's really what the PPP funds were designed to do. It was
Hmm.
an 8 year, 8 month, 8 week block of time, that we were going to provide funding, use our taxpayer dollars to really provide funding to keep people employed and to try and help small businesses get through this. The
Hmm.
problem is that it wasn't an 8 week problem, right?
Right.
I mean, we still have 60% of small businesses saying they're negatively financially impacted from COVID, and we're beyond 6 months into it at this point. So, uh, when we talk to small business owners and we're saying, what about more PPP? They get it. They would, the ones that are hurting the most, and some others would definitely take it
Hmm.
to help them get through it. But they realize the true answer to this is consumer confidence coming back, getting the case numbers down so that customers feel comfortable going to businesses,
Hmm.
and really getting the engine going again. And if you see
Hmm.
the countries that have been successful in reducing the case numbers, that's what you see on main streets there, is you see much more vibrant
Right.
community. Now, I mean, now we've got a problem where all of Europe and other places are having this secondary resurgence, and clearly it's happening in the United States, and it's going to be a real struggle for this fall. So we are probably going to need some additional funding for small businesses to get us through this time period. The challenge is we just don't know how long it's going to be. So how much would that money be? And there's a lot of other things going on in Washington these days that are occupying people's cycles. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no question. I, how can your fellow B2SMB brands help you in this effort, in the My Money Stays Local effort?
Well, I think, they have a lot of spending that they do, right? And
Hmm.
clearly encouraging their staff to spend money locally,
Hmm.
to do their own math. And as a company, spending its money locally to the extent that it can in support of local businesses. And then just amplifying it, right? Get your team out there, taking a photo and saying, my money's staying local, and even doing like a video like this woman. I mean, I'd love to tell her story in our
Hmm.
newsletter that goes out to millions of businesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, it's all little acts of kindness
Yeah.
compiled
Yeah.
that will get us going in the right direction. And it's going to take time, but every little bit helps. So whatever they can do to get the word out, to get their staff to do more, and to encourage their customers to keep it local as well.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I think with the many different brands that will be consuming this small biz aid content, I hope they all reach out to you and just ask, hey, give me some more particulars of it because I really would love to extend it out. And I think that
Awesome. It's Eric@alignable.com with a C, ERIC. Send me an email. I'll take care of you.
perfect. So I want to not to end on a down note necessarily, but I think that you and Chuck sent out this most recent September survey results that you guys had gotten back, and it was really kind of a heart stopper. I read it, I put it down, I picked it back up again, and I had to put it back down again because it was just kind of breathtaking what seems to be on the minds of small business right now.
Yeah.
I think what really obviously was the headline news, and I really don't know how much coverage you got on this, but was the calculation that you guys did that, now through the end of the year, there
Mhm.
are 42% of small business. You did a calculation that basically said the anticipated revenue that a small business had versus the anticipated expense that they had.
Yeah.
And 42% of them were upside down. And the
Yeah.
implication of being upside down is that that's not sustainable. That's something
Right.
that, come January 1st, we may be looking at that 42% being upside down as really the failure rate
Right.
of small business. What what do you think? I mean, you've had some time to live with this, and other than the oh shit of it, what are your thoughts? What are the things that come top of mind that will help to stave that off?
Well, I think so. First of all, a certain percentage of businesses, typically 2% of all businesses, go out of business every month, and 2% get formed, right? So there's
Right,
a constant cycle of new
like a
business
birth rate.
formation. Yeah.
Right,
And clearly this is way above that. And at the same time, small business owners are eternal optimists, right? I mean, they have to be with everything
hmm
that they face. And so if you come up right front and say, okay, so are you going to be in business at the end of this year? You're going to get people going, yeah, I'm going to find a way to make this happen, right?
right,
And so what we did was to take a little bit different tack on it. We said, okay, so based on last year's revenue, what percent of last year's fourth quarter revenue would you have to hit in order to stay in business into 2021? And then we asked them another question, which was, what do you anticipate in terms of Q4 revenue based on where you were last year? And
hmm
what we did was we looked at the people that were upside down through that equation. The great news is we're just starting into Q4.
hmm
And we can control as consumers where we spend money.
right,
And we can change this if we change our behavior. If
right.
we step away from the rhetoric and everything we see on CNN and, and in the news, and we just sort of say, we got to get ourselves out of this problem.
Right.
How can we do something in our local community that's going to help our local community recover? And
hmm
the answer to that is simply changing our behavior, right? Stepping ourselves out of survival mode, putting on a mask and going downtown and, going to your favorite stores and your favorite restaurants and doing
hmm
pickup. And with my kids, throughout this whole process, every time we would go to pick up an order, we're leaving a 20 to 30% tip
Right.
for the restaurant, right? Because their people are working hard and they're getting hourly wages in there, and you can make a difference, right? And if you have the wherewithal and you can do that, it just injects a little bit more cash into the local system. And
hmm
it gives these guys a chance that they can spin the flywheel a couple more times while the rest of the country tries to figure out how to get us out of this, how to come up with a
hmm
vaccine and all that kind of stuff. We're just buying time,
Right.
right? And so, yes, the numbers are kind of scary at 42%. It's 45% when you look at the retail side. It's 38% when you look at the B2B side. But we're not through Q4 yet,
Right.
right? It'd be one thing if it was a fait complete and it was like, okay, this is over, this is done. We can chip away at that number. We can take that 45 down to 30, down to
Mm-hmm.
20, if we want to,
Mm-hmm.
right? We just have to do the right things, and we have to do it in a safe way. And we have to do it in a way that actually, supports other people in the community, right? As a
Mm-hmm.
store owner wearing a mask is not saying you're going to give me COVID. They're saying, I want to protect you from me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's not them making a political statement. It's them saying, I care about you.
Mm-hmm.
So care about them,
Right.
and just do the right thing. So yeah, I do see it as, the numbers are, they're a wake up call,
Right.
but they're a wake up call that, if we don't do something about it in January, we can have this conversation going, geez, I wish we'd known about this 3 months ago. But we do,
Right.
it's October.
And I think that's the wonderful part about the My Money Stays Local campaign, and people like Kimberly Maiden Holman, who is a force of one, but is doing
I love that.
something that is so easy. I mean, you were mentioning Ice Bucket Challenge. My God, how easy would it be to really spread across your Facebook network and then the network of your Facebook connection to say, hey, my challenge to you is to go into 3 small businesses between Thanksgiving and Christmas time and do a live feed that says how
Yeah.
wonderful they are, and the type of social power that would have, because it is, I mean, what has always been wonderful and at the same time maddening about small businesses, right, is the fragmentation. Is there's
Mhm.
so many little ones, and to do something that is going to have a kind of a global impact or have a national impact is, it really requires millions of individual actions of support for the
Right.
millions of small businesses that are out there. And that's just hard to imagine. But there's also many more millions of consumers. And if we could just get them to kind of recognize, hey, look, take advantage of the same restaurant that I was telling you about earlier, has they basically have a convenience store menu attached to their takeout menu. So that if you need milk,
Mhm.
a liter of pop, a box of graham crackers, any number of things. You get about 50 items basically that you just bolt on to your delivery order, your curbside pickup order rather, and not have to go to the Walmart supercenter to buy those things. And it's just,
Oh,
you just hope
absolutely.
that more and more of those ideas really get franchised out there and people take advantage of them.
Well, and it's funny early on, when we were trying to, everybody, my daughter and I got into this craze of making bread.
Hmm.
And, we were struggling to find yeast. And she reached out to this Italian market in Falmouth, and the guy was incredible. He's like, "Oh, I got some packets. I'm going to save them for you." And so we drove down there and grabbed the packets, and then there's a French bakery in town, and she called down to them and it's like, I really want to make sourdough. Is there any way I can get some sourdough starter? And they're like, oh, absolutely. Come on in. So we went in there. She, put on her mask and walked in with $20, and they gave her a little takeout container full of sourdough from like the best bakery you could ever imagine for sourdough in Boston, right? Down in Falmouth. And, and she's like, well, how much is it? And they're like, no, nothing. It's free. And she's like, forget it. Here's $20. Thank you so much. And, and then we have the North Falmouth cheese shop. And, we couldn't get access to flour, but she could, because she could buy it in bulk and
Yeah.
she could package it up. And so people were getting flour from her, and she didn't sell flour before that, but she's like, people have a need. I'm going to solve it. That's why we love small business. That's why we need to keep them around,
Yeah.
because their answer is always, of course, come on in. I got you covered. I'll take care of you. Sure, have this. And that's what we love about them. And we'd be really sad if 6 months from now, 40% of them went away, and we knew now that we could have done something to make that not happen. We'd be pissed at ourselves for not taking advantage of it. So, now's the time. Get pissed at yourself now. Go
Right.
do it.
Go take
Go,
action.
yeah, take action. And like you
Right.
said, like this woman that's doing these videos, I mean, I want to get her name because I want to put her in the newsletter. Um, that's fabulous. We can all do that.
Right. And it's not, I mean, and I think that just like in the sourdough situation, these are not complicated things. This is
No,
not pivoting. This is not the reimagination of your business model. This is not, this is not overly complex. This is just simply, in that wonderful creative entrepreneur spirit, recognizing there's a thing that you have that is just as valuable as the thing that you were selling yesterday, and
yeah,
you just need to adapt, and
yeah.
they do. It's
It's called
remarkable.
human kindness,
Right.
right? I
That's
mean,
a big motivator, no
shocking,
question.
shocking. It's human kindness.
Shocking.
If you pay it forward, that'll pay back in spades, right? So,
Well, your kindness and in joining me and really kind of laying out my money stays local. It is Eric with the C at alignable.com for anyone who wants to reach out and really kind of get a little more detail on what the campaign is all about, but really picking up at least the idea of the campaign in keeping your spending and the spending of your company, your team, your family, your neighbors, keeping it local it doesn't require Herculean effort, and it would potentially go a long way to reducing that number that your survey has pointed out as storm clouds on the horizon for fourth quarter.
yeah,
So
wouldn't it
listen,
be
man,
wonderful to
thanks
say
as
that that
always.
was completely wrong after the fact, right? That'd be awesome. So it's
Exactly,
like,
exactly. Eric exaggerated again.
yes, yes. I'd love to be back in January saying that.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, listen, man, as always, thanks very much. I appreciate the time and look forward to doing this again soon because you always are a great interview and are always doing really cool and interesting things. Thanks so much.
Absolute pleasure, man. Thanks so much for including me.